Next, we have a paper entitled Comparison of Laparoscopic Skills Performance Using Laparoscopic Single-Site Access Devices versus an Independent Port Approach. This is out of Washington University School of Medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Rosser, Dr. Solar. My name is Matthew Schill. I am a second-year medical student at Washington University School of Medicine. And these are our disclosures. The data today will be presented in a scientific and unbiased manner. To begin, interest in single-site access laparoscopy as an alternative to standard multi-port laparoscopy has increased in recent years. And thus, SSA-specific access devices have been developed by industry to facilitate performance of these procedures. However, no studies have directly analyzed skills performance using different SSA access devices in a dry lab setting. So our aims were to compare performance of validated laparoscopic tasks on 4 commercially available SSA devices compared with an independent port SSA setup. Participants included 14 medical students, 4 surgical residents in years 3 to 5, and 5 attending surgeons. The study design was as follows. First, medical students were trained, residents and surgeons were tested to ensure proficiency on a multi-port lap setup in 4 tasks: peg transfer, bean drop, pattern cutting, and extracorporeal suturing. They then performed 2 to 3 timed repetitions of the drills in random order on 5 different SSA devices. And so these are the standard multi-port and independent SSA comparison setups we used. You can see them here. And the SSA devices we examined were the Applied Medical Gel Point, the Ethicon SSL Access System, the Covidian SILS port, and the Olympus ASC Triport. And you can see those here. Data are mean plus or minus standard deviation, and statistical analysis was as shown. So I'm going to show you a series of 4 graphs, and each of these is going to show, first for comparison, multi-port, then the independent port setup, and the 4 ports. And the bar on the left is medical students, in the middle, residents, on the right, attending surgeons. So we can see here that significant differences were observed between the medical student group, between the SSL setup and independent, and the tri-port setup and the independent port setup. And no significant differences were observed for the resident group or the surgeon group. Similarly, for the bean drop, no significant differences were observed between the independent port setup and any of the single incision setups. For pattern cutting, significant differences were observed within the medical student group between the SILS port and the independent port setup, the SSL port and the tri-port and the independent port setup, and also within the resident group between the SSL port and the independent port setup. So these times were significantly longer than for the independent setup. And also, for extracorporeal suturing, medical students had significantly higher times on the gel point and the tri-port than on the independent setup, and differences for residents and attending surgeons were not significant. So adding up total time for all 4 of the tasks, we can see that within the medical student group, all 4 single incision devices had significantly higher task times than the independent port setup, and the times for the 4 devices were roughly equivalent to one another. For senior residents, the profile appears similar. However, the differences were not significant. And for surgeons, again, the profile appears similar, but the differences between independent and the single incision devices were not significant. Attending surgeons had significantly faster task times than residents or students, as would be expected, but the difference between residents and students was not significant. And although times averaged over 100 seconds longer for the device setups versus the independent setup for residents and attending surgeons, the differences were not significant. And so when you combine all the participants and compare task performance for the devices, time for peg transfer was significantly faster on on the independent port setup than for the access devices for 3 out of 4 devices. This was the case for no devices on bean drop, Independent port was faster than 3 out of 4 devices for pattern cutting, 2 out of 4 for suturing, and 4 out of 4 for total task time. To summarize, single-site laparoscopic access devices are associated with longer total laparoscopic task times in a trainer box model compared to an independent port single-site setup. And task performance was not significantly different across different single-site access devices. To conclude, SSA devices confer no performance advantage over an IP SSA setup in a trainer box model. However, further studies are needed to determine whether these findings translate into clinical practice. I'd like to acknowledge my training grant and the Washington University Institute for Minimally Invasive Surgery for supporting this research, and I'd like to thank SAGES for the opportunity to give this talk.